Madam Speaker, there is a crisis at the border. I mean, the president even said so. There is chaos at the border. The crisis and the chaos have been created by policies of this administration. We were down at the border 2 weeks ago. Every agent we talked to, every single Border Patrol agent we talked to said the crisis has been created by policy changes made by the Biden administration, specifically 3. They announced to the world they weren't going to deport anyone. Moratorium on deportation. They announced to the world they weren't going to finish the wall. And most importantly, they got rid of the Remain in Mexico policy. And what do we have? We had March, the highest number of illegal immigrants coming into our nation since they've been keeping records. So it is definitely a crisis, definitely chaos. And what do the Democrats do? What do the Democrats do? Last month, they passed 2 bills that give amnesty to millions of illegal immigrants. You can't make this stuff up. And then today they're going to pass a piece of legislation that takes power away from the commander-in-chief, takes power away from the individual who was on the ballot and was elected, and gives it to the unelected Secretary of State and Secretary of Homeland Security. I mean, you would think if they were going to take power away from the president, they would at least give it to the vice president. After all, she's the one who's been put in charge of this thing. But they don't even do that. They don't even do that. The answer is real simple. What we should be focused on, reinstating the policies that worked. In fact, again, when we were down there 2 weeks ago, and by the way, we invited the Democrats to go with us. They said no. When we were down there 2 weeks ago, every Border Patrol agent said reinstate the policies that were working, and we don't have the problem. We don't have the crisis. But no, we couldn't do something that common sense. We couldn't do something that simple, that basic. They instead come with this legislation. Reinstate the policies that work. Don't take power away from the individual who was elected by the American people, the commander-in-chief. Don't implement crazy policies. Do the things that work. But no, that's not what we're going to do. And then after this bill's done, they're going to say, oh, by the way, bring in the lawyers. Give access to counsel to people coming into our country. It makes absolutely no sense. One of the speakers earlier said, out of many, one. That is so true about this country. But is it too much to ask to have the many who come into this country do it legally and have policies in place that make sense? Is that too much to ask? I think most taxpayers, most Americans think that makes good common sense. This bill does not. I hope we vote. When do Americans get their freedom back? Can you put your microphone on, please?
Sorry. When we get the level of infection in this country low enough that it is not a really high threat.
What is low enough? Give me a number. What I mean, we had 15 days to slow the spread, turned into 1 year of lost liberty. What metrics, what measures, what has to happen before Americans get their freedoms back?
My message, Congressman Jordan, is to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as we possibly can, to get the level of infection in this country low that it is no longer a threat. That is when. And I believe when that happens, you will see.
What determines when?
I'm sorry.
What measure? I mean, are we just going to continue this forever, or when do we get to the point? What measure? What standard? What objective outcome do we have to reach before Americans get their liberty and freedoms back?
You know, you're indicating liberty and freedom. I look at it as a public health measure to prevent people from dying and going to the hospital.
You don't think Americans' liberties have been threatened the last year, Dr. Fauci? They've been assaulted. Their liberties have.
I don't look at this as a liberty thing, Congressman Jordan.
Well, that's obvious.
As a public health thing.
But
I disagree with you on that.
You think the Constitution is suspended during a virus, during a pandemic? It's certainly not.
This will end for sure when we get the level of infection very low. It is now at such a high level, there's a threat again of major surge.
Dr. Fauci, over the last year, Americans' First Amendment rights have been completely attacked. Your right to go to church, your right to assemble, your right to petition your government, freedom of the press, freedom of speech have all been assaulted. I mean, for a year now, Americans haven't been able to go to church. Even today, when they go to church, they're limited in the size of worshipers who can meet. Your right to assemble? Oh, my goodness. We had a curfew last fall in Ohio. You had to be in your home at 10. In Pennsylvania, you had to be in your home. When you're in your home, you had to wear a mask. In Vermont, when you're in your home, you didn't have to wear a mask, Dr. Fauci, because you weren't allowed to have people over to your house.
Yeah, Congressman Jordan.
Your ability to petition your government for a year, American citizens haven't been able to come to their capital to petition their government, to talk to their representatives, and freedom of the press. These very pictures that Representative Scalise just showed you and talked about, guess what? The press isn't allowed in those facilities.